We've got tips and recipes for healthy living. So for fun and inspiration, come and join us in the raw food world.
Start to, again, oxidize your lungs.
Wow.
So we don't really recommend that kind of thing. And in 1918, when they had the big flu thing, some people survive getting hydrogen peroxide IVs because it kills the viruses.
Right.
Because the way our immune systems work is that your phagocytes cells that kind of walk around it, they attract the viruses, bacteria, and then they kill them with hydrogen peroxide.
Wow. That's
You
nice.
see,
Yeah.
but if you get too much of that, then that's not so good.
Right.
So it's always a balance in the body is really what we're talking about.
So when you're like living in the mountains, when people are in the Himalayas and they're reported to live hundreds of years old or whatever, is that there's like less oxygen, isn't there? Or is it?
Yeah, but a lot of those people are doing pranayama.
Right.
You know, at one point I was on my way to interview somebody who's 700 years old, and all he did was he lived off air. He did pranayama,
Wow.
breathing exercises. So it's like fine. Fortunately, he died before we got there. But he wouldn't let anybody within 50 yards of him. So it's all kind of a balance because your blood will adjust. If you're living up in the Himalayas, you'll have more red blood cells.
Wow.
Because you need more blood to pull in more oxygen. So there's pros and cons of how that works. But the body's always adjusting to get an optimal amount of oxygen to make the system work.
Right.
The body's pretty clever. Even though we get in the way a lot of times, the body's pretty clever.
Okay, so in 1910, in this book that was written,
Yeah.
other thing he recommended besides the phosphoric acid was distilled water, because he's saying water with lime in it
Right.
and that will help pull it out. Actually, the distilled water is what he actually
Yeah.
recommends. Now, people like Daniel Vitalis and David Wolfe, they think that the distilled water is no good for the body. I was just wondering what.
Well, it's an interesting question. Patrick Flanagan, who's like one of the world water expert type people and a genius, actually said something very interesting. He's been on distilled water for 25 years, and he thinks he's got no problem from it, but he's advocate of it. I'm mixed, okay, because even though science doesn't actually show that the distilled water actually pulls the minerals out, there's an intuitive part that says, I think it does. So but it's intuitive. It's not research based. So the thing is, what we try to do is we do water distillation because it takes out all the homeopathic patterns, the fluoride, the chlorine, the pesticides, herbicides. You're guaranteed that you got clean water.
Right.
And then we restructure it with crystal energy and blessing and creating implosive energy and adding per gallon 12 drops of active ionic or a pinch of some of the salts, Himalayan or Celtic salt, and that will bring it up to 50 parts per million of minerals.
Wow.
At that point, you have H3O, okay, which is super hydrogenated water, which is what you want. So a little bit of mineral, I think, is important.
Okay. Cool.
But you can get away with, some people get away with doing just distilled water. It doesn't quite feel right. So we do a little bit to activate it, because H3O, see what you want from water, it's a universal solvent, everybody knows that, but it's also a universal antioxidant. If the water is too alkaline, then you lose that. It actually starts to act like lime and dissolve you.
Yeah. I've heard.
You see that?
Yeah.
And so the people doing alkaline water, the Japanese research suggests that that's not so good in the long term. For the short term, it may feel okay. Everything works in the short term, kind of. Long term, it actually starts to dissolve you like lime would dissolve you. So we think a pH of 6.9 to 7 is pretty optimal, and it really brings a condition where you have water as a universal antioxidant, which is very, very, very good. You get a lot of electrons coming into the system from the hydrogen.
Right. That's cool. One last thing. I love what you guys are doing here. on all levels, and I love how you're like, seriously, you're like out there to like change the world, and I can see that. And for an example is you brought this Native American in who is very popular amongst the community, and
Talking about Dennis Banks?
yeah, yeah, and I think that's very profound. Can you tell us a little bit about him, babe?
Yeah, Keith was mentioning to us earlier that Dennis Banks is like a very influential figure, right, in the Native American community, and he is here with the diabetic.
Yeah, so Dennis Banks, Gabe was known about him for a long time. He started AIM, American Indian Movement, which is a fairly radical group of people. They stood up against the federal government at Wounded Knee.
Yeah.
A while ago, before your time, okay? He was in the time of the Black Panthers, that kind of energy.
Right.
Okay, he was a hero. And then, he, as he developed, right now he's 76, he's a very wise and important leader because that heroic energy they put into standing up against the federal government. So Dennis is now, kind of a social healer among the people, and he came here, don't feel free to tell his whole medical story, except he's working on diabetes, and right now he's essentially cured of diabetes after 2 weeks.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool. They gave him, insulin, and he said, forget that. There's got to be something better than that. And it just happens that his kind of, I won't say adopted, but kind of functioning son, Vernon, is the person that's come down here and stuff. So we work a lot with the Native Americans. Myself, as a 4-year sun dancer, has done the eagle dance, which you stand for 4 days with the hooks in your chest for 4 days to the pole, and standing for 4 days, and then we do spirit dance here too. So we have a lot of energy with Native Americans. We do our monthly sweat lodge, and then we do a sweat lodge with the diabetics in our 21-day program, which isn't just for diabetes, but it's a generally rejuvenative program. So that's kind of our connection. So Dennis comes and he gets ill, and we're having a good time, and Gabriel let us sweat for him because we do Lakota way, and he let us sweat, and it's like there's a real nice exchange and appreciation. And he's working on the diabetes walk across the country.
Yeah.
And I will be speaking at that on February 14th in Southern California, and then we're trying to get funding to do a massive Native American diabetes program, taking it, training people here, and then taking it out to the reservations where we'll set up kind of diabetes healing centers. As we're doing in Nicaragua. We have a program in Nicaragua. We're creating another Tree of Life energy there, and that will be like the main diabetes program in all Central and South America. And what we're doing, you see, is it brings live foods to the whole world.
Right.
That's the big picture. It's like, all you have to do is live foods, and you got to do a few things. This is not so hard. So really, in a very real way, we're getting the message out to the whole world. Perhaps the back to what we're saying, you got to move from the culture of life, cultural death to the culture of life. Live food is really key for all healing. And so we're legitimizing it with taking something that we have 246 million people with diabetes around the world.
Right.
Hey, one person dying every 10 minutes, 10 seconds, every 10 seconds. It's like, this is pretty easy. So they're saying you can't heal diabetes type 1 or type 2, and what we're seeing is, oh, well, that's interesting, because in 21 days, 53% of the type 2 diabetics are off all their insulin medication and have a blood sugar less than 100, which is considered non-diabetic.
Wow.
32% of type 1 diabetics, 32%, which is an unbelievable number, are off all their insulin and with a blood sugar less than 100, which is called normal, in 21 days. So we're kind of saying, well, look at the facts, folks. Don't look at your belief systems. And that is opening it up. So when we take it to Nicaragua, it's like, President Nicaragua is delighted that we're going to do this work. So we have support because people are knowing they don't have the answers.
Right.
They don't have the answers. And some places are willing to say,
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again at the Raw Food World.